critical thing, but marriage is very difficult. Difficult in that it takes effort. So let me explain what I mean. People think love is like, let's say, okay, let me do it this way. People think love is like an engine of a plane. You fall in love and everything's beautiful and you fly. Now what happens if you strap yourself to an engine, two people? You can't fly in an engine. You're dead in a few minutes. It's impossible to last. An engine is critical for a plane, but a plane needs many components for a safe flight. You need wings, you need a cabin, you need the whole system of a plane. Relationships are like that as well. A relationship certainly needs love and romance. That's critical. You could say it's the engine of a relationship. But love itself will not keep a couple together. It's like flying on an engine. It doesn't work. Jewishness, Jewish identity, is a very deep and critical thing. And marriage itself is very difficult and challenging. So if you have two people, one of them is Jewish, one is not Jewish, or one is Jewish and one of is of another faith, it creates so much more difficulty in that marriage and in that relationship. It's hard enough as it is, but for somebody to say, I'm going to leave my Jewishness behind, and that identity, and that history, and that destiny, often, I would say all the time really, is very short-sighted, because Jewishness is something very deep in the Jew, and to pretend that that's not there, or doesn't exist, or is not an issue, is not really being honest to what the person is. And so therefore, when somebody says, I'm going to marry somebody, I'm Jewish, but I'm going to marry somebody that's not Jewish, they're causing ultimately great difficulty in their own life in the decades to come, especially with children, because of those vast differences. Marriage itself is a difficult thing, or it needs a lot of work. But then the whole Jewish thing and the difference is an enormous mountain to climb. And there's a lot of statistics out there about the difficulty that interfaith couples have, especially with children. A few years ago, there was a cover, I think it was of Time magazine or Newsday, of the difficulty that intermarriage has. I believe the front cover had a picture of a Hanukkah menorah and a Christmas tree, and children all confused, kind of in the front cover. So, and very often, in my experience I see here at Stanford, when people do marry out of their faith or intermarriage, although in the beginning you don't see some of the difficulty, but with time you see the Jewishness becomes a very big deal, especially when it comes to raising children.
Great. So you mentioned that there are going to be difficulties, inevitable difficulties. So what are some challenges you think a couple might face, an interfaith couple?
So they face, interfaith couples face many challenges. You see, Judaism is a way of life. It's a way of viewing the world. There are many beautiful holidays. You have Shabbat, you have the high holidays, you have Hanukkah, you have raising children. So all these things become a very big issue when it comes to raising children. She's getting in the way, right? So when somebody comes, so imagine, imagine you ask about intermarriage and challenges of intermarriage. Let me put it in a very simple way. Imagine somebody loves science, and you say, I want to dedicate my life to science, to reading about science, to discovering things about science. You're very passionate about science. It's wonderful. The person who you're thinking to marry has no interest in science, and perhaps their passion lies completely elsewhere. Now that person could be a wonderful person, but if they are not into science at all, and certainly they don't want to raise their children in that fashion, you ask, now what is going to happen with that marriage? You're going to have a lot of difficulty. Imagine one spouse loves science so much that they want to speak to their child once a week about science for a few hours, and they want to go on science trips, and they want child to study lots of science and the other spouse has no interest in it. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the other spouse, but it's naive to think that that's going to not cause many problems in the future. Jewish life is the same thing. Judaism is a worldview, and there's so much passion and love and study there. If one spouse is not Jewish and not interested in Judaism, you're going to have many, many great difficulties, not because the other spouse is bad, God forbid, and not because they're wrong, it's because it's a different way of life and a different viewpoint. So how do you bridge that gap? It's really a chasm that is unbridgeable, especially when children join the family.
Do you think any of those challenges that interfaith couples face could be overcome?
I mean, look, once there is, once a couple's married, the situation is completely different, and certainly once there's children, then you have to try to make the best of what is. So you're taking a very difficult situation, or a situation that could be very difficult, and then you need to deal with it. So obviously it depends on where each spouse is, and what they want to support. You can have Chaya, hold on, I'm just going to try to get her. Chaya? Hold on, I'll be back in a minute. Let me just try to get her to take, okay? Hold on. Could you play with Leah for like 10 or 15 minutes just doing this interview when she's making cute little noises?